investor, early investor, investor in some of your companies. But more importantly, I think you're a thinker. You're a thoughtful human. She just asked a question today: who among the billionaires in the last 20 years of their lives have become better people? She said better. I said better what? Better humans? She said yes. But you, she also, just so you know, is ready to retire on Mars. And I don't know too many people. Not too soon. But I don't know too many people who could represent the human race like you. But you've got thoughts on your mind, things that are interesting you, bugging you, and AI is a central theme. And you think we're not getting it. Our eyes are not on the ball, we're not seeing it. So why don't you just tell us what you're thinking today?
Okay. I'll start. Please interrupt. I like questions because I already know what I think. So getting new prompts is my pleasure. And of course, prompts themselves, which are questions, is what I grew up with. My dad's boss was Oppenheimer.
I've heard the movie.
So
Dad's boss.
I lived in this bubble. I was 14 when I discovered my surprise. I thought I knew about people in stores and the mailman and the milkman every day, but I thought normal people got 3 months off in the summer. So I learned a lot since then.
Normal people grew up with Albert Einstein.
Yeah, I met Albert Einstein, but I was more interested in my first grade teacher. PhD mattered to me. So I'll start on AI a bit. The thing about AI is, first of all, it has become so popular in the last few years, and people think AI is large language models basically predicting what is likely to be said based on what has been said before. And some of what has been said before is untrue, some of what gets mixed up is untrue, but hallucinations are not themselves bad. One of the great hallucinations back in the late Middle Ages, was that the world was round. Everybody knew it was flat, and there were these heretical people who thought it was round, and actually it turned out it was. But so sometimes a hallucination should be an aspiration, and sometimes it should be outed for being untrue. But that's only one part of AI. When you look at human beings, there's this new question. I think it was in the journal a few days ago. Oh my gosh, we can now not just tell you what your chronological age is, you can tell you the chronological age of your body parts. But the reality is, you're about as alive as your weakest link. And somewhat in the same way, AI is a collection of body parts. Some of those body parts started long ago. They were logic models. If A and B are both true, then C is true, otherwise C is true, false. And there's lots of other facets of AI, and if you're a techie, you will say they need APIs to talk to one another. And what's happening right now is that all these large language models need models of the world to talk to, whether it's a database in a company or a more vector graph 3D model of the world of medicine. They need to understand databases, they need to understand math rather than understanding accounting, rather than memorizing. And we're very far from that happening, but that's how I like to think about AI and where I see the investment.
When you say far, how far are we? Because things are happening at an accelerated pace.
The easy stuff happens really, really fast. The hard stuff happens slowly, and that's kind of what's happening now. The easy stuff, which is replacing rote work and creating chatbots, is pretty quick. But creating APIs that work and that are foolproof, building those models of complex systems. We've now got protein folding, but we still there's so many causes and effects. I mean, who here is in advertising and understands attribution? Yeah.
3 people?
I mean, that's, why are you here today and not somewhere else? Depends on people you met a few years ago, it depends on a chance encounter with somebody, it depends on reading a certain book. And how those things all come together is extremely complicated. And designing a model of that actually works. And that can, then that has enough data to go back and see what actually happened. That's the hard part.
Somehow looking at you, Jack, you met someone yesterday who knew your daughter's, his mother-in-law knew your daughter? That's over ping pong.
Rotterdam is a small village.
Yeah. The human interaction is the serendipity of how AI works with that. But my main question in 361 is always what scares and excites you. So what really scares you and what really excites you about this?
About 2 or 3 days ago, I got a press release from some PR guy who's in this background about a company called, the product's called Send It. I can't remember the name of the company, but I got it. And the basic pitch is several, I think kids have already used this amazing product and are going to create digital twins of themselves so that they can avoid the awkwardness of talking to their friends and have their digital twin answer questions. And I find that terrifying. It's not said, but the fundamental notion is you can be an influencer and have millions of fans without doing any work, as opposed to you can be a human being and have a few friends who love you and will miss you and who love and miss them, people who give you purpose. It's like telling people, we'll just give you a diet of pure sugar, so you don't need to do any of this work on protein and fiber or anything else. And it is going to kill your humanity. It's really terrifying. I didn't even want to put it on Twitter because I didn't want to, like, yes, this is something that should actually be canceled. So that is just horrifying. And you can see how addicted it would be, but you can also see that every kid is going to feel they have to have a perfect digital twin. So now they're not just comparing themselves to their friends, but they're comparing themselves to a purposely idealized and unblemished and untrue version of themselves. And the other question.
Just a comment, they already do that with avatars.
Yes.
So this is just like,
On the level.
yeah, it's just taking it to the next level. I mean, I have a 12-year-old daughter.
But
You know, and they're all
what it
kids.
means with that is social media, right? Then AI combined with the steroid.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is terrifying. And our kids are, again, they're being seduced by all the stuff around them. But this is kind of like, this is the fentanyl of addiction. Yeah, the AI addiction, if you like. It's
What excites you?
what excites me is getting rid of the busy work, and frankly, I mean, it all depends on what humans do with it. If they create digital twins of themselves, it's going to kill us. And if they instead say, I want to use this AI to do something useful so that I can spend more time being here and loving my family, then yeah, the world's not going to be perfect. It's deeply satisfying to solve real problems. It's pretty corrupting to create problems that you can solve a solution.
Let's stick on that for a second, creating problems. So I know corporate world has done that sometimes, but what are you seeing
Robinhood, the company, the gambling company, calling itself, we're democratizing investing. There are too many transactions and not enough value creation in this business. And, yeah, so the stuff about AI replacing us, if it replaces us with something better that has a sense of purpose, great. But there's another thing that AI can create is the wealth income issue. We're way too focused on income. And the reality is, wealth gives the opportunity to take, we were talking about this earlier, to take reasonable risks. If you take good risks over time, you will do very well, if you can afford to take those risks. If you don't have a base of assets.
You can access the opportunities associated with them.
Sure, yeah, but they will present themselves. I mean, one risk is go to a new place and get a new job. But you can't afford to do that if you don't have an asset that will allow you to take that small risk. The opportunities are easy to find. The ability to take advantage of them and to afford the risk that comes with them is not. Then there's all the other stuff. AI enables bad people, but what it really does is it enables bad business models. Because people are first seduced before they're connected.
Is this seduction happening not just in business, but in politics and world politics?
I think you should ask.
Yes. So
No, it's,
I can anticipate those.
yeah, we can talk about Russia at length, if anybody wants to.
Let's talk about it a little bit.
It's where I learned a huge.
I feel guilty because I was part of the U.S.-Russia IT roundtable at Stanford, and we were like some of your friends and my friends, and I feel like we're enablers of what is happening right now.
In Russia.
Well, now it's
Yeah,
there are implications,
Russia.
and there are Russians in here.
Yeah.
There's a Russian friend,
Yeah,
diaspora.
no, I mean, it's, a lot of people from outside think Putin is the problem. Putin is the symbol, the result, the embodiment. But there's a cancer that's spread through the whole country and beyond. And so it's not as simple as, oh, change the manager. The government there is not capable of running a honest country, which is sad and terrifying. The worst, and I see it's coming back. I resigned from the board of ethics in February of 2022, the week before Ukraine. It was
Great
an interesting
founders,
week. Yeah,
great
wonderful.
company.
But it had become a vehicle for government propaganda, which is why I resigned before Ukraine. And it's the cynicism that is engendered. So this was Kazakhstan, it's the same thing. The big newspaper, which was owned partly by Nazarbayev and partly by family and government control, whatever, had this article mention that the guy who ran the telco, which was similarly a simple establishment, was making $300K US a month. Nobody said, oh my gosh, I thought it was, that's amazing. They said, I wonder who caused that information to be released. Yeah. It's like everything has a double, triple underground meaning. Nothing happens by accident. If you discover a nice piece of the tax law that will benefit your clients, you'll tell them and you'll tell your friends. If a Russian finds something like that, the reaction is, I need to find out who put this in the law and seek their protection, and then perhaps I can use it. It makes no sense, but that's how it.
How's that permeating, they might not appreciate it fully, but how's that permeating in our world today?
The same cynicism, the same mistrust of it. And there are stories that may be true that get extended. The whole, we're going to tell people they don't need masks so that we can send them to hospitals first. You know, tell people need to send these to the hospitals first. Don't, the level of deception, the level of mistrust, and the level of everything is there. And so there's a guy, many of you may know, Maxime Truliev, who wrote for a number of publications, once explained how could you have Putin and Medvedev, who at that time was actually a kind of modern liberal guy, together. He said, well, what people don't understand, the government is like a TV channel. It's like The Apprentice. You know, people vote for a hero, they don't vote for the hero's policies. And Medvedev and Putin, they were just two different channels of the government. It didn't have to be coherent. And we're now, like, nobody talks about the policies. The New York Times, the journal Fox, it's all about the political game, not the policies that game is
No
limited
one really talks anymore, right?
That's good. You shut up.
There's no, like, we're gonna open this up again
Yes.
to that point, but there's, you know, in Ohio, you wonder why Trump was elected. New Yorkers have no clue, like what's wrong with the country. That it's the social media silos and other forces. Well, let me just, before I open up, in the spirit of, we were talking about Kissinger earlier, there's Russia, the US, and China. How do you see China today?
So Russia I see from inside, China I see from outside. Russia is extremely messy. And yeah, if you don't like somebody, you know, you don't bother to control them. They fall out a window, or you ignore them, but whereas China is actually trying harder to please its people. But it's much more brittle. It wants control. Whereas Russia, I mean, especially in the US, they don't want Trump. They want chaos. They want neither guy to win. In China and in Russia, you know, just the question one kept hearing until recently was, if Navalny is so honest, why is he still alive? Yeah.
It's pretty honest.
Russian jokes are always a combination of tragedy and comedy. But China's, they want to be cleaner looking, they want to control everything. There's censorship in Russia, but there's a lot more censorship in China. And they want people to feel happy and be deluded. Whereas Russia just wants them not to make too much trouble. I remember Anatoly Karachinsky, who had a company called IBS.
Sure.
One of his favorite photos was him and his friends, this would be like mid-80s or something, at a rock concert, 20 miles outside Russia, outside Moscow. Yeah, you can do it, just do it quietly. Whereas in China, they would have shut it down. I mean, so I don't know what that means, but it's a different culture.
That makes me want to ask you, what do you think of Iran and Saudi? Saudi, I just came back from Riyadh, and I learned something here that they want to have 40% of the population who are not from Saudi. The implications of all that. And Iran is sort of letting some things happen, and now they're clamping. Those are two major societies right now also. What do you think of those societies?
Okay.
I'm interacting with you, so.
Yeah, no, this is harder because, number one, I know them less, but I went to Saudi Arabia once, and sorry, madam, our gym and our swimming pool are for our
When
gentlemen
was that?
guests only. It was 10 years ago, so some things have
So
changed.
a lot has changed
but
in the
it's-
last 4 or 5 6.
I know, but it's still the country where the guy in charge,
There's a leash.
say it again,
A leash.
at least. No.
Not a leash. A space leash.
Oh, a leash. Well, more than a
Still-
leash. I mean, journalists, they weren't delicate. The guy did not fall out the window. And I find that hard and hard for people to take money from that regime. So, those are my thoughts.
And Iran?
Iran I know less about, and I'm sure they murder people too with impunity, and I just don't know. I mean, certainly, they're not the people I go to for help first.
Okay, so I waxed a little bit global.
More global than I am.
Well, we're a rather global group.
Yeah, no,
So-
that is clear.
So we're just sort of touching the bases. All right, let's interact. Yes. You don't, your generation doesn't remember Phil Donahue. Phil Donahue.
Thanks. So my name's Michelle, and I share some of the same concerns you have about AI. However, a founder recently phrased it to me, thinking about how current social media and all of our internet essentially today is all optimized for engagement. So social media, yeah, that's how they make money, etc. So with AI, how there'll be an opportunity to optimize for something else, or efficiency for getting our time back, being able to spend more time with our family and friends. Is that too idealistic, or is that, what else could be opened up there by engaging for some, or optimizing for something different?
It's totally possible. AI will optimize for whatever the business or the individual who controls it tells it to do. And so the challenge is how do we, someone was talking about regulation earlier, and regulation of AI is, it's kind of like regulation of electricity or something. I mean, it's not inherently good or bad, it's what are you doing with it? And, well, we can regulate the algorithms, but that's, I think ultimately, in some sense, we need to regulate the outcomes. And the way to do that is through liability. If you produce bad outcomes, you're responsible for those outcomes. And one wonderful way to use AI is for attribution. How responsible were you for that outcome versus this other person? And so you bear joint responsibility.
Right.
And just one other, this whole notion of people are now, especially young people, getting interested in supply chains and provenance. Was child labor used in this? Did they pollute the atmosphere? In the same way, we need to look at information. Where did it come from? What has its impact been? Has it been kept pure, or has it been adulterated? And using AI to track all that is one of the best uses.
One more question back here. If you could announce your name and your company.
Hi, Esther, how are you? Charles Beruthi with Former Prime. So you mentioned a lot about the risks of AI and obviously some of the great applications. You mentioned obviously biotech, right? And the first thing that I thought about when you mentioned biotech was the application of AI in CRISPR, right? So I guess just on a more general note, how concerned are you about the weaponization of AI? We've been seeing some stuff in the defense space, we've been seeing some stuff in the biotech space. How do you view that?
Again, I'm terrified about the people controlling it and what they can do with it, because it makes everything more powerful. So if we let bad people, or again, bad business models that are often a combination of greed and delusion. I mean, there are people trying to do bad stuff, but then there are just people who are trying to get a good job to take care of their family, or they think this is really cool. The people creating this digital twin thing, they're not trying to do evil. They think they've got something really cool and the kids want it. But actual evil actors are even harder to detect. And the more we regulate rather than go upstream and look at who's trying to make it do what and what they're, earlier I was doing a lot about misinformation. You need to look at the metabolism. Don't look for the sign, the signature. Look for it the way PET scans look for cancer. Look where does the nourishment go? Where does the money flow? And if the money flows someplace mysterious, look harder.
As a follow-up to that, could you give a definition of what you think about
What is a bad actor?
A bad actor is a bad human. I mean, it's someone who ranges from super malevolent, like again, the Russians just want to create chaos outside of Russia because that would make Russia look better, to someone who simply wants to make money without regard to the ethics of how they're doing so or not might harm people.
Jackson, Jason.
Hi, Jack Harrison, the Future Farmer. I'm agreeing with you on everything that you're saying, and I just wanted to make a comment. When it comes to AI, there are really great uses, and we're talking a lot about regulation. One of the things that I would like to hear you say, do you think regulation is as important, or do you think law is more important? Because I sort of believe in what we do, we're looking at trying to track those bad actors, to try and follow the money, and trying to prevent harm to humanity, right? So I actually believe it's the humans that perpetrate that, or the corporations that allow that perpetration, should be punished by law, not necessarily regulatory ethics, which can stop the flow of innovation and corporate.
Right. Exactly what I said, by liability and liability under the law.
Right.
You need to be held accountable for the damage you caused. And again, assigning that damage and tracking how it happened it's not easy.
Which jurisdiction has the best model? You know, the Europeans are always worried more about ethics than the Americans are.
Yeah, and
you follow their thinking?
not entirely, because I think they are, I mean, part of the problem in Europe, honestly, is they pass these laws and stop innovation, but they also, in many countries, there are easier ways around the law, she says politely. And, you know, the challenge is finding, going where, you know, the source of most of this stuff right now is the United States and probably China and a bunch of really brilliant Russian programmers, and there are a lot more mathematical geniuses distributed around the world than we're aware of. They have not all become rich, but many of them are already very smart. So it's a challenge, but I mean, I can't sit here and give you the simple answer.
Yeah.
All I can say is it's a complicated question.
Let's keep zigzagging. More questions?
Hi, Esther. Jason Ma, Silicon Valley. Good to see you in person finally. My family business is 3DQ. I'm also doing a very exciting tech startup in Estelle. Question for you. You have a magic wand. We're in the same backyard, okay? You have a magic wand. In Silicon Valley, in fact, it's a great segue to my question. What would you like to change in terms of culture, ways and means? It's the most powerful place besides DC, you know, anything you want.
I would like to change the culture. I once, and many times, but once it was just totally clear, I once was going to invest in a company, and the woman said, I asked her, you know, you're a brilliant scientist, but we're gonna have to bring in a business person at some point. How would that go down with you? Oh, no, I've always wanted to be CEO. That is not a good goal. I've always wanted, and I mean, I can get much more complicated, but I want to solve a problem by fixing the source. Not, I got this great technology that's a solution. Because a good founder and a good person is focused on fixing the problem, not on selling their solution. And they're driven by passion, not by, wow, this is a really profitable thing to fix. So changing who the heroes are and creating a culture where billionaires are not surrounded by sycophants. Because this,
can you answer the question, what billionaires in the last 20 years have become better people?
yeah, what a unique question. I mean, the two I thought of are Mark Cuban and Mark Benioff. And some of them, I mean, that's the whole point. The one ones who really become better people aren't out there talking about it. They're out there doing the work, whatever that work might be. And it may be just taking care of their mother, or it may be taking care of your village, but it's not hiring a PR guy and becoming an influencer and buying 3 islands and 2 yachts.
An AI guy question here, maybe.
Yeah, so, hi, Esther again. Given your unique perspective, knowing Russia and Yandex from the inside, I think nearly half of the money I made in my career was by investing in Russian technologies and selling them to Zuckerberg and Gates, or, so there's 600,000 roughly Russian technologists who have fled the country after the war, a lot of them from Yandex, and a lot of them are bringing their businesses too. I personally see it as a great opportunity, but I'm very interested to learn your perspective as an American investor. For example, Arkadi's new ventures, he's setting up Nebius, he's setting up like new stuff that is technologically incredible. Do you think they can raise and invest?
That's a really interesting question. I mean, I was, as you started talking, I was thinking this would be a great group of people to look at some of the ex-Yandex, ex-VK, all the others. I'm on the board of one started by Karachitsky out in Vancouver. I don't know, I mean, for some people, no. And again, there's regulation. Oh, if you're Russian, you must be suspecting laundering money. But yeah, well, it's a long story, but I met Jeffrey Epstein in Russia in 1996. Yeah, but fortunately, Bill Gates is more famous, so he gets in trouble for it.
Let's cancel the next session. Let's hear about that.
Anyway, Americans, it varies, but Americans in general are fairly forgiving and also understanding. I mean, perhaps the most important thing is making it clear that not all Russians supported Putin, and that many people you think are Russian are actually Ukrainians. And it's sort of like Canada and the US. If you're here, you make that distinction. But if you look at Eastern Europe, you don't make it. Just, to me, one of the saddest questions you could ask a Russian parent was, what did you tell your children when you were trying to be a good parent and teach your child to know the truth and tell the truth? And that could get you in trouble. And that's what's happening there now again.
Other uplifting questions?
Yes, sir.
Hank Rogers, Blue Planet. I used to be in the game business, and my policy was that I would never work on a game that I didn't want my children to play. It was a very simple rule of thumb, and and I think it applies to AI. But what I'm thinking, we're talking about the stick. Like if you break this law, then but these AI companies are going to have like mountains of money, and I don't see how the stick is going to work. What I'd like to see, and this is of course a radical, crazy idea, is that we create an AI which tracks the other AIs and finds out how much evil they do. And if we can find out how much evil they do or how much good they do, then they should be taxed accordingly. And then basically what will happen is there'll be competition. If you want to make more money, do more good.
Just quote next.
It's pretty crazy. What do you think about that?
So quote next. There's an AI for that.
Well, it's got to be implemented, yes.
It is exactly that attribution of the good and the bad that we do. Just like with advertising, the attribution of somebody's behavior. It's the same sort of question.
You're thinking about this with the insurance industry.
Yes, yeah, and also, so if rather than be regulated by government regulators and regulations that are 3 years old, needs to buy liability insurance. And so the seller of the insurance, what made fire insurance so valuable was not that it spread the cost of fires. It was that everybody's building was inspected, the fire escapes were made sure that they opened to the outside. And so the level of risk was reduced. I love insurance that reduces risk as opposed to insurance that spreads risk. And that's, thank you for the prompt, that is exactly what we should be doing. I mean, somebody here, start a reinsurance company that is focused on funding a lot of insurance companies that basically perform inspections and then charge you.
But are they enlightened enough to be on the AI level?
Well, when most, I mean, that insurance companies are. You need, what you need is the right incentives. And the incentive is to hire all the brand people so that your AI is better at detecting the risks of doing evil.
Sanjeev's got a question.
Thank you.
Hi, Sanjeev Rao, River Guide Labs. My question is, Sam Altman recently said, from OpenAI, he recently said that there's going to be soon a $1 billion worth company with 10 people in it, and soon after there'll be a $1 billion company that'll have one employee in it. What do you think of that?
I can see such a structure, but in the end, the person, yeah, there can be an AI company that has a board and no person, if you like. You can create it, you can structure it. I don't know what the precise regulations are about having a CEO and an employee or something. But again, there should be a board that tells that single person or that single AI what they can and cannot do, what their goals should be, how they should measure the impact they're having, both good and bad, and maybe you can bring in an insurance company to help you measure that.
Could AIs be part of that board?
Not in my world. However, yeah. And I mean, who knows? How many of you, most of you have heard the thing about they used to be called space aliens, now they're called bots, but they're looking down at Earth from a spaceship. And they're saying, it's so strange, there are these things down there, they think with meat. You know, like there's this chemical goo, and that's what they think with. So
I know you don't believe in longevity.
No, I don't believe in longevity as the primary
but
goal.
what about tissue implants to enhance that meat?
That gets really complicated. And there are challenges about fixing deficits versus remediating real problems. I mean, in the whole world of neurodivergence and autism and so forth, you know, maybe, quote, I'm mentioning words and I'm using them. Autism is a defect, or maybe the world is badly designed for people who think differently. And what you don't want to do is set up a world where only some people get the benefit of these kinds of things. And the other is just never delude yourself that being smarter is better than being kinder.
I was just curious, you've talked a little bit about attribution, and if we can do good attribution, making pricing or punishment or regulation about doing good versus evil, but you know, I came out of it tech, Michael Silver, All Tech Capital, and like we have people on these stages, Republicans with 100 million followers, saying that the social media that they're on is shutting down their messaging, like screaming into a megaphone about the evils of megaphones, and people with 100 times the followers of Jews in the world saying that Jews are controlling them. And I guess I don't have faith in anyone's ability to define evil today and how you see that happening in a way, like if we convened a panel, who gets on that panel and what is the outcome from doing it?
So Mark asked for uplifting questions, but let me volunteer one thought. I once, so think about voting and think about sitting on a jury. People now vote, like, as I mentioned, like picking a TV show. It's not a game, but it's emotional, it's done as a tribal thing, it's done as an identity thing, it's not done as a policy thing. When people sit on a jury, I once was lucky enough to sit next to Sandra Day O'Connor at a dinner, and I asked her what she thought of this, and she liked it. So they take it seriously. They bother to study what happened. They look at the individuals. They feel that somebody's life is at risk, or at least their livelihood. And they learn, and then they make a principled, ethical decision. I mean, they're bad juries. She said she'd encountered 2 over her life that were really a problem. She didn't tell me about them. But in general, so how do we move voting to be more like sitting on a jury? One model is the panel that sort of votes on behalf of the people and studies the issue, and the other is just educating people to vote, and frankly getting more poor people and discriminated against people to vote and feel a sense of agency, which changes a lot of things. And even if they don't win, they change the outlook of the winner because they know that I still need to please those people over there because otherwise I'll lose my edge. We need to start taking civics more seriously. It's really a cultural problem rather than one you can solve easily with regulations. And then you have, I mean, there was enough discussion about the recent Russian elections, which were a complete sham. And it's the culture that matters, not the rules embody the culture more than the culture reflecting the rules. So those of us who believe in a better culture need to get loud about it without shouting and screaming.
So, a couple more.
Esther, in the 80s and 90s when the internet was being democratized,
Yes.
I read everything you wrote on old. What is your opinion about how AI becomes democratized in what we see today?
Well, democratize is a very, it's a word with many meanings. Everybody can now use AI almost, I mean, it's in Microsoft, but again, there are different kinds of AI to be used. And you can't democratize AI without democratizing the people. So the way to democratize AI is to, number one, educate people to be better humans and to be self-aware, but also to be aware of the motivations of the AI they interact with, to understand how to use it, and to understand how the things, people and fake people and media that they're interacting with what are their business models. Our business model is food, warmth, light, love. Most companies' business model ultimately is money in some form, and if we do it right, they also care about their reputation because that will, this whole notion that money is the only thing that counts is insidious and damaging. So, but getting people to understand the world better will enable them to use AI better and to their own benefit rather than being the victims of it.
Something just said, reminded me when during COVID, with humanity, we can't help ourselves. We read the diaries of people during the plague. We were too social. We go back out.
Yeah.
We need it. AI is a whole different force. But
Yeah,
Abilene brought you here in a way, and she has a question. So Tiffany, you have.
I was going to end on a high note.
Oh, I know you're good.
Oh, thank you.
I
We need
wasn't.
that.
I'll talk to you later about like Elon Musk and all of these people who I'm like, I wonder what they're really going to be doing. But
Introduce yourself.
I'm sorry. I'm Avonlea. I'm the CEO and founder of Avonlea Care. You recently wrote an article on AI in children. In what way have you seen AI used in the most impactful way for good?
Probably supporting people who are doing good.
Mm-hmm.
It's, again, it's like all these things. If you look at people's income and how they spend it, 100 years ago they spent a huge amount of it on food. And then there was housing. In Russia they spent nothing on housing because the government provided it, so it was mostly food. And coming much more recently, you saw a tremendous amount of money going towards communication, whether it was cable TV, cell phone, now internet. And so AI is extremely valuable, but it's going to be relatively expensive in some form to build it because of all the energy consumption. But it's a small part of what it takes to make people better or more effective compared to the number of people. And so if it empowers good people, it's incredibly cheap. I don't know if that's...
Yeah, I was just trying to end on a high note.
We should end on a high note eventually by all having drinks and being human together. Hank, did you want to, or is it, where did Mark go?
I just wanted to make one last comment. I belong to a different culture. It's called Burning Man.
No, but you're going to take us there.
And what it is there's a set of rules, and we all live by those rules, and we go from our normal lives into that life where there is no money, there's no garbage.
Well, there's Eric Schmidt's big tent.
Okay. There's abuse. I'm not saying that it's a perfect world,
no,
but in general, for the masses of the population, everybody treats each other with respect. There's no, how can I say, we don't look down on anybody. You can be whoever you want to be. You can dress how you want to dress or not. And it's how can I say, it gives me hope that humanity can change. And so if we were to get together with a bunch of smart people, like the people who started the rules at Burning Man, and say, well, here's a set of rules that we think should work for AI, and then somehow incentivize the AI companies to actually follow those rules, maybe we have a chance.
Maybe we do. And maybe we could do the same thing and go to a really good nursery school and see what they're teaching the kids there. How to play together, how to listen to one another, how to learn how to count, how to take a regular nap. It's all about people. So go forth and multiply.
So don't drop the mic.
Okay.
This is in a jazz orchestra. They've been to our events. The whole event is jazz. We're a jazz orchestra here. So we improv. So you're not leaving. We're gonna enhance your violin playing with a few people. One person that was supposed to be there, I may have lost him. Peter Borich, great guy, but he did say to leave. But our anchor person, Steve Burke, you can take my chair. I want to talk about Africa a little bit. So I wanted, if we could, she's around. Margaret, are you back? And I'm going to pick on a few people here, because I want different perspectives. You may be called up. Just be ready.
That's how to get your audience to pay attention.
Yeah. By the way, the nursery school thing, know, blue collar. I was at YMCA. And we learned how to speak French. We learned basic skills. That was those are formative years, right? Are you going to comment on Africa or that?
Both.
Okay, so you've heard all what we've heard. You can talk about all the above, but this next panel is about how we see investing by assets and globally in light of the forces that Esther spoke about. But you can talk about whatever you want.
Oh, no, but just early childhood development. So about 2008, I was given a book by a banking exec who grew up in poverty, and the charity he supported, it was 1 square kilometer in the Eastern Cape, in very, very high impoverished, and it was HIV, single family, kids-heading households. And so this nonprofit did many interventions, cradle to career, and the single most impactful one was early childhood development and getting newborn kids into formal daycare, and that was so much 10x return on investment versus late, getting them into the right universities and high schools. So I'm reading this book, I spoke to someone else about Endeavor. So Endeavor.org, a global entrepreneur development organization. I am a long Endeavor mentor. I'm taking some African fintech execs to Silicon Valley to get their gold seal of approval and some venture capital. I'm reading this book about ECD. I'm a parent. I didn't know anything about the first 1,000 days. And I got off the plane, and they had subject matter experts about ECD in Africa. It was a San Francisco Foundation and Columbia Education School. So I go and meet those people. I said, what can I do to help? They said, go to Innovation Edge, a catalytic startup fund focused only on ECD, but bringing people from technology, business, blah, blah, blah. So long story short, I helped to set up ECD centers in corporate offices and factories, getting rich people and poor people to play together, and getting their parents to learn together as equals.
Can we team with them?
It's incredible.
So that does sound great. So I saw some notes. You had some notes.
Yeah, put them away. I can't compete with Africa.
So how do you see the world today? Again, every Tuesday, 11 o'clock, he kicks off the subject, but maybe just something fresh.
Well, I got one right. The Fed announced that they're going to stay with 3 cuts right now, so didn't change. So 206 weeks, and I got one.
Yeah.
More.
You have more than one. We just remember the strange ones.
Yeah, there are a bunch of those too. We need AI to go back and edit. I guess the world for us is, well, first of all, I think before we get into investing, what you heard earlier about helping with Abigail and the stuff she's doing, I think we need to do a much better job of taking care of our country, our families, and everyone who lives here, and really think about it in a different way than we have. So before I get into that, we're actually rolling out next week a new service to help families with special needs, addiction, and the like, and I think it's an area our industry needs to do better. So we're having a call to roll out a new service. The traditional commercial banks have been providing trust services, and they keep moving up higher and higher in their minimums and leaving more people who really need the support without it. So it's an area we all need to do better, help the youth and help the disadvantaged here. 54 million people in the U.S. are living with a disability right now. That's a numbers skyrocketing, so a lot more we can do there to help as a community. If it doesn't start here, where's it going to start? So, what do you need, 1.8 million?
Yeah, sure.
So,
do you want me to give my
start
turn
writing,
back?
start writing checks, but this area we can help.
But her model, just so and Esther's the investor, but the model is really to help connect caregivers that are unpaid directly to the provider of meds, groceries, and I mean, we're all taken care of. I got 3 kids and I got 2 kids now, my parents.
Yeah, and I will say that, to Esther's comment about, Mark Cuban being better, We reached out to Mark Cuban, and he integrated cost plus drugs in, and I think he gets it as well. We have a massively growing aging population. I read this book called Stage.
Have you pitched him yet?
So I am talking to him next Monday. We're partnered with Cost Plus Drugs, but I read this book, Stage Not Age, and this woman said that people being born after 2000 will live well into their hundreds. And if you think about it right now, if you were to start to use something to care for an aging parent, when I ask people that question, Life Alert is really the only option that comes to mind. And so we're hoping that, over the next 5 to 10 to 15 years, there's really a household name of a way to actually remotely care for an aging parent at home, but also connect into the home care agency, the plan, and then the retailers like Walmart to keep people at home longer. So.
Okay, back
to
the macro.
So on the macro, I think there's 4 big things that are going on. First is we know we have this cost of living problem that's getting alarming for a lot of families. So just to put it in perspective, Bill showed some of the numbers, but I think credit card interest payments alone went up $500 billion last year. So we're seeing these numbers skyrocket. People are going to be struggling to pay their bills, to cover other expenses because cost of living is rising all over the place. Credit card debt's moving up, other debts are moving up pretty fast, and people are going to be struggling. So that's an issue that we're going to be faced with for years to come, because they can talk about inflation coming down all they want in politics, but you pay what you pay, and it's the cost of living, and it's still going to be high. So I think that's one that we're going to have to adjust to, and I think the flow through from that is it slows down consumer spending and could potentially slow down corporate spending, because if the consumers aren't spending in the U.S., they're 60% of our, or 70% of our GDP. Then the companies react to that. They start slowing CapEx, and you start to see slower growth. We're not there yet, but we're reaching a point where it feels like people are going to get more concerned about that very quickly. And I think part of that's just that we have now 4 and 5% interest rates for a year, when they thought they were going to be here briefly and we're going to go back down, and you feel the pain go away. So I think the higher cost of living is going to be with us for a while, and that's a big issue. I think the second biggest issue is the global fragmentation we have going on. We talked about Russia and China and Iran just a few minutes ago, and that's not going to get any better, but are we going to lead to a bifurcated world where you have twice the cost and lose all the efficiencies that globalization is creating? What does that do? That's going to keep inflationary pressures higher, I think, for some time. But it gets into more than that. We're going to be creating redundancies on trying to stockpile scarce resources, which is going to make the things even worse, which gets to more mining, more other bad things for the earth, too. So we got to figure out how we're going to deal with all this when we create a system that gets twice as expensive, twice as complicated, uses twice as many resources. You're going to have some real problems. I think on the other side, we look for where there are opportunities. The reindustrialization that's going on in the global economy, for me, is one of the biggest opportunities. And as Bill mentioned, the U.S. has been a big beneficiary of that. And it's a lot of our industrial policy is driving business to the U.S. from the rest of the world. Our energy policy, our energy independence helps with that quite a bit. But really, the advantages of the U.S. are coming to the fore right now. And I think that's why the U.S. is doing what they're doing. And it's actually, the Fed just raised their GDP outlook to 2.6% as part of it. So they're holding rates even though they think GDP, the economy is getting stronger. So I think that's an interesting element too. But I think the biggest opportunity is what we've been talking about, the advances in technology used for the right thing. And we're seeing a change industries left and right. I guess I would ask Esther the question, on a positive note, what are the 3 industries you think benefit most soonest from AI?
Okay. I just want to ask you one footnote question.
Yeah.
Those interest payments, are they included in the GDP?
Yeah, because it's actually income for some.
Yeah,
right?
I know.
That's
right. It's income for something of no value.
Yeah.
Well, it's not, maybe it's not, whatever.
Yes, it depends. If you're living on a fixed income, though, the higher rates give you cash. It goes out the other door.
Yeah, I'm stalling on this 3. I mean, clearly, medicine and healthcare, if we do it right. I mean, again, AI frees human beings to be humans, rather than look into their computer when they should be looking at the patient. It will generate a patient summary that the patient can then take home because they can't remember, was it one dose every other day or 2 doses one? And then there's also just medicine and understanding what causes diseases and finding drugs and protein folding and all that. So again, it will increase the time available to caregivers to give care if we work it that way. You know, manufacturing, just fixing things, building things. The robots can be very, very useful. Again, not in caring for people, but in doing everything else so that people can care for people. And you know, clearly finance and law. Law is kind of, take a law, then a lot of rote work happens to apply the law to a particular situation or a corporate structure, and a very large and complicated document is created. Then an AI can come and read that document and summarize it for another person. So machines replace physical work. AI will replace the sort of rote mental work. The one thing it won't replace is humans for a long, long time.
Speaking of humans.
Pardon?
Speaking of humans.
Yeah, that's last century.
No, very much this century. It's shifting so fast. And let's talk about China's population. When does it go to 500,000, Stephen?
2100, it's supposed to project it at 500 million.
In what year?
2100.
2100. What is Africa's population in 2100?
So the only figure I know off the top of my head is 1 in 2 people on the planet will be born in Africa by 2050. Right, and so if I had shown my slides, it shows Africa coming up to Asia very soon. And it's just the youthfulness of the African population that is so, you got to pay attention to. So it's good news for U.S. companies that have crop to sell to businesses and to consumers, because you have increased purchasing power, digital native population. But back to AI, I was talking about over lunch, we invest in ed tech companies that use AI and machine learning and mobile phone distribution, so to take low-skilled teachers in very, very low-cost private schools, and this is happening from ECD, primary school, high school. So many government systems are broken, but incredibly African ed tech founders are creating hugely beneficial and private education systems, so in real life, but using AI, machine learning, and distribution of curriculum, and then using technology to upskill and retrain teachers. So you're not trying to change like the physical distribution, but you're using technology to enable curriculum and innovation and personalized learning.
I was telling it the way you just twisted your book a little bit.
But I can't live in the macro too long. I can go up to 30,000, and I got to land it in something practical.
So how many portfolio companies do you have in Africa now? How many countries? 139
in 22 countries. So like the next Ethiopia will definitely be 20 country number 23. Yeah.
So again, let's make this a community discussion. We want to think of where we should be investing globally and by asset classes. Clearly AI is a force.
I have a correction on the number. It was U.S. consumers paid 50% more in credit card expenses last year than 2020, and it was $51 billion in interest and fees, went up to $157 billion. So a big jump, and that is really out of the pockets of really the people who can afford it the least. So that's the problem with those numbers.
Speaking of Africa, Egypt.
One second. Yeah. I was just going to add something to that statistic.
Okay, quick go.
The other thing is, we touched on housing again. The cost of owning and maintaining a home is up 81%. The cost of owning and maintaining a home is up 81%. Housing prices are up between 21 to 28% in the United States. But the cost of owning and maintaining is up 81%, which is a pretty staggering number.
Yeah, the mortgages and the repairs, and you can't find plumbers.
Right. Listen, I just had painters at my house this week. trust
And
me.
just what you could get by on, what was $75,000, you now need, was what the number was, I think it's now $140,000 or something like that. That's how much things have popped.
Well, residential incomes are up. They're not up nearly as much. Residential incomes are up 15, and then you've got 21 to 28, 81. So it's really out of whack.
Amir?
So I'm from Egypt, and I think I can't resonate more about what's happening in Africa. It's a very, very big population. It's all youthful population. So I sit on the board of the African Business Leader Coalition for the UN. Every single day we talk about the youth of Africa, and I think the statistics are just given that the talent scarcity that we're seeing here, there's almost 30% that we can't fill. On the other side of the world, it's a huge difference. It's the other way that most of the youth, they can't find job, but despite they are actually, many of them are quite qualified. And I think how Asia has made it is by exporting goods to the West. I think Africa wouldn't make it by building business to Africa. I think they will make it by building businesses to us here. And that's the opportunity that here we can leverage and build on, is using this youth. Again, COVID has actually made this very, very possible to use this youth to build products that could be global. You know, a concept that is now say that Africa to the world rather than the other way around.
Comments?
Just Amir, do you know Andela? So one of the first African unicorns is a digital learning platform, and it exports African talent to U.S. corporations and takes advantage of, it's a very good salary in Africa, but it's 20% of the U.S. salary for very global tech skills. And West Africa has two lookalike companies to Andela, an AI company in Egypt called Lyrise, and Semicolon in Nigeria, and actually third one, African Foresight Group. So it's not just upskilling this talent, it's creating the pathway and connectivity to global corporations and investors and creating the community. So that's what we're really good at, is connecting these solutions providers to the demand side.
So a few more questions before we go to breakout.
So Eric Newman, City of Stanford, I'm a pension trustee. I've been on 2 different delegation trips for the State Department to Africa.
Oh, serious?
And like I said, I went to the bank and said, I'm going to be going to these countries. And the person, my bank tells her supervisor, oh, he's going to the country of Africa. So it's 54 countries, and the growth is huge. Like I said, 1 in 4 people will be African born. Population is going to double by 2050. It's a young population, but when I was going there, the first thing I was told by somebody says, you're going to notice 2 things. A very young population, high in employment, but everybody has one of these. Fall. I'm taking, a graduate class. I have classmates on the continent, it's the middle of the night, and they're waking up to be in this classroom live on their cell phones. And half the time they say, Professor, I'm only on my battery. If it drops, I'm not leaving the class, I just can't get on. And the activity is huge. Look at our ambassador in Kenya, Meg Whitman, right? eBay, HP. She says, when I was running HP, we didn't even look at Africa. Big mistake. And the textiles, and so it is growing and a huge opportunity.
But as a pension, is your pension allocating? Are you shifting allocations to Africa?
Challenge. It's a challenge how to convince other trustees, other people. Ideally, at some point we will. Sometimes it takes some others to lead the way and say, okay, Philadelphia, Hartford, pension plans, they've invested in public pension plans, local equivalents have invested in Africa, City of Chicago, as well as a number of states. So you're getting movement, and it's easier to say, okay, if they did it, they bought this. And when we meet with them, we partner with trustees at the African pension plans, some of our consortiums, and we're looking at retirees, right? Our base is retirees. Their base is a retiree. So you're looking at very different risk return. exposure, and they know the local, and vice versa. They're looking to at times get their money invested in the U.S. So and having those relationships is important on both sides of it.
I just want to comment, I didn't know the city of Chicago had some African investments. Mayor Daley used to send me emails. So I was a freelancer for the FT, and when I had Africa stories, he'd send me questions. So it was super interesting.
If you could, what allocation would you put to Africa if you didn't have to get approval from anybody?
Oh, we go through so-and-so sales, that's a
No, but left to your own devices without anyone telling you you can't, for your plan, what would you do?
I don't know percentage, but not broke, and finding the right partners is critical.
1%, that's, I say, just take 1% of your allocation. If you have a 10-year view, let's work on that. It'll grow. No, but you gotta start somewhere. I don't think, you gotta start somewhere, and we need data, right? Like, I totally understand. So some of our LPs are advisors to pension funds, and they said, we'll help to get you a conference, just education, and get more rich data. We have the best private markets database because we just have invested in more private companies than anyone.
One more question here.
Yeah.
Business statement. I'm an old African sea dog from Cape Town, Cape of Good Hope. The storms, and as you know, with the blockage, there's a lot of the boats have been diverted to the southernmost point of Africa. Now I'm going to leave you all with 3 statements. I'm not going to clarify them. I'm just going to give you the information. And for those of you that care, I would suggest that you verify what I'm about to say. So, South Africa, it's a promote, right? We don't need to say a lot about Elon Musk, but he's a South African boy. We do need to talk about Rodney Sachs and his partner, who, like you, were litigation lawyers. They raised $5 million, which is a lot of money, in '95. And they went to Northern California and they bought Hanson's Natural, which they took public. And they weren't entirely ahead of the time, but they injected fizzy water into fruit juice. That grew. They had some celestial herbal teas. And along the way, Hanson's, which at the time, at the IPO was HANS, migrated to Monster, MNST, because they saw these chaps in Asia that were doing this crazy stuff with these amphetamines and so on, and that became their best-selling drink. Now, if you look at, I don't need to clarify, you all know about Musk's rise, whether it's economic or otherwise, which is controversial. But Monster went from a few cents, and today is considered one of the best-performing top 5 stocks in the history of the stock market since '95 till today. We're talking about a few thousand times return. The last one, so that's MNST. The IPO'd in '95, it was a couple of bucks, now it's a $60 billion company. The last one is 10 cents, where Chris Becker, who went to Columbia here, when he took over Nas Pierce, did a grad thing. He said, we need to get with it. The company from the 1800s, you had Trees, which was the newspaper, which was publications, which was cable TV. We need to get with it, and we're going to do it in China. So he gave China 10 cents in early 2000, just pre-IPO. He gave them about $50 million. And they turned that at the peak. How much did that become at the peak? Today, 10 cents, they announced earnings yesterday, has been cut in half. So it's trading at about less than half of its all-time high, which was in early 2021. But the 50 million at the peak with their stake, I challenge you now in this room, what did that become?
150 billion.
Excellent. 175 billion. So they turned 50 million into 175 billion. Probably the greatest trade that will ever happen in anyone's lifetime in this room.
I hope not.
They divested, and they retained about 32%, which over the last 5-6 years has now been reduced to about 28%. So those buggers in Cape Town at foreshore still own 28% of that 10 cent stake.
I'm not going to make statements. I'm not going to clarify. Trust my verify my. But what about the mining stocks?
The mining stocks have been in a proverbial state of chaos. Right. That's a whole different story.
I love this conversation. So my foundation has been in Africa for 11 years, and to
10 years ago, I met a goat farmer in Botswana, and she taught me about Bitcoin. She literally, in 2011, couldn't afford health care for her son, and on that journey, she learned about Bitcoin. Her son passed away, and then took her one-room hut and turned it into the Satoshi Center in Botswana. Now, fast forward, she's advising the government, etc. What are your thoughts on the millions of people that are using Bitcoin in Nigeria, Zimbabwe, Botswana, and how this is really, to me, looking like a very, and so much of these groups in Africa are really more advanced than people in America with AI.
Totally true. So as an investor, we don't invest in crypto, but we do invest in like remittance companies that use stablecoin. Yeah, and obviously with free fall of Naira, the fact that you have blockchain crypto savvy Nigerians, no surprise. One of the companies that Todd Rupert mentors, they have crypto investment as part of their platform. But AI definitely is the future, and I'm really pleased and proud to work with so many companies that are ensuring that their staff and STEM training across the continent is upskilling people so that they have the AI skills to participate in the global economy.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I like Bitcoin to use, but I don't think it's, investing in crypto is not, it doesn't create value, unfortunately. It helps transact.
Okay, so that sort of is an interesting kind of comment on asset classes. We want to talk about in breakouts. We're going to take a break. The far room where we had lunch is where we're going to go and talk about, let's say, anything in the public markets and private equity, private credit. If you're interested in the venture markets, right here, I'll say broadly, we're going to go into industries next round. If you're interested in, Africa became a subject, right? So let's make it over there by the coffee area. Sorry, you don't have seats. And I wanted to do a few other geography. So basically, public and private equity, venture, Africa, and if people want to create another roundtable, we sort of have an area over here. I'm game. But let's break. 5 minutes. Be in those. With 5 minutes, be in one of those areas. And I'm going to be like pulling you. But the way we do these is everybody introduces themselves in like 10, 15-second bites. And then we want to talk about that stuff. What scares and excites you? And then what do we want to do in that asset class or that geography? We're going to do an Africa tour. We're going to do a LATAM tour. We just did a GCC tour. We were in Riyadh, Abu Dhabi, Dubai again. So we want to keep it moving around, see where people want to do, then we'll do industries breakouts and philanthropy and impact breakouts the second round. So public, private equity, credit that way. Venture here, Africa there, we'll figure out what goes there. Thank you, everybody.